After releasing part 2 of this series, we were pleasantly surprised by the many positive comments it received. It's a sign that many fans are open to this theory, researching the topic themselves and ultimately recognising a similar message in Michael Jackson's work as we have. While making this video, we anticipated negative comments, online slander campaigns, and even personal attacks. The information is hard to digest, difficult to believe, and for certain individuals, a topic not up for discussion. The reality is that there are people in this world who do not want to consider that an elite group of people who worship the devil with such a willingness and extreme intensity that they are willing to kill, torture, and abuse in his name. Some of those wishing to silence us are even in this community, but thankfully they are in small numbers. As we have said before, this series is more theoretical in nature than any of our previous content. That does not mean, however, that the theories stated have no basis or argument to support them, nor does it mean we shouldn't be able to freely discuss theories because they make some people uncomfortable. The core purpose of this series is to open your eyes to certain possibilities you may not have considered on the premise that your heart is too pure to fathom such horrendous crimes. Many of us could never dream of choosing this sadistic way of life. That's why this topic is so hard to discuss. We are merely giving you a peek into a window of the world that is hidden from us, a world we believe to which Michael Jackson was very aware and tried to warn us about. A world he grew up in, but as an adult rejected and refused to be a part of, making him an enemy target to the people who tried to control him. It is up to you, the viewer, to do your own research and make up your own mind. In this installment of our series, we look further into the connections that exist in the world of the elite. You will be presented with an interesting chain of events to consider, including a webbing of powerful people within Hollywood and politics connected to each other and Michael Jackson. We do not claim this information is concrete proof of anything, but believe it is something that requires consideration for its implications. Join us as we go further down the rabbit hole and ask questions we never thought would come to fruition. As with part 2, we will warn you that some of the content and theories in this video may be emotionally triggering and upsetting to some people. Please proceed with caution. This is Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein was a convicted sex offender who in 2008 served 13 months in jail for procuring an underage girl for prostitution. This pitiful sentence was part of a plea deal. Epstein had in fact originally been accused by 36 girls of sexual abuse, but due to his plea deal, this predator was able to evade facing consequences for the dozens of young girls he had allegedly abused. Epstein was arrested again in July 2019 on charges of sex trafficking and conspiracy to engage in sex trafficking. Epstein trafficked girls in the Caribbean as young as 11 years old up until 2018, according to a new lawsuit filed last January. Epstein died in jail in August of 2019 while under suspicious circumstances, with his death officially ruled a suicide by the New York City medical examiner, though a pathologist hired by Epstein's brother claims his death may have been a homicide.
It's been more than 5 months since Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his jail cell here in New York, and still many questions left unanswered. Famed pathologist Dr. Michael Baden, who was hired by Epstein's family to look into the autopsy, is revealing new details from the investigation and the examination, and he joins us live. Dr. Baden, good morning to you. You say that the answer to whether or not he killed himself could be in his eyes. Explain that.
That helps. That is, with hanging, when the loop comes up under the windpipe, under the mandible, there usually is not any kind of hemorrhages in the eye. With homicidal strangulation, because of the increased pressure, there are hemorrhages in the eye.
And when you examined the body, there were burst capillaries.
There were burst capillaries in the eyes called petechiae, and that's not conclusive, but that's greater evidence of homicide than suicide.
When you hang yourself, what about your lower extremities?
When you hang yourself, the blood, the lividity, the blood settles down to the lower legs, and you get maroon discoloration in the front and back of the legs.
Turns purple.
Turns maroonish purple.
Okay.
Yes, maroonish purple.
And
this was not present here.
What color were they?
They were normal color, normal pale color of the skin.
You may ask, what does Jeffrey Epstein have to do with Michael Jackson? In plain face value, nothing. However, there are links of interest between Epstein and many people connected to Michael Jackson, both indirectly and directly. Please bear with us as we try to unravel what looks like an elaborate plot to destroy Michael Jackson and his legacy. Although the mainstream media had no choice but to report on Epstein's crimes after his arrest, they certainly attempted to downplay the extent of the child trafficking network that Epstein was linked to. Many high-profile connections of Epstein were either mentioned only briefly or completely ignored, and certain others, who have never visited Epstein's private island, which had earned the infamous name of Pedophile Island, were headlined in the media as if they were Epstein's closest acquaintances. Why would it be newsworthy that Chris Tucker made one single trip on Epstein's private jet to Africa for a charity event with Bill Clinton in 2002? A trip where, even according to one of Epstein's accusers, people were cracking jokes and were at ease to fall asleep while watching a movie. Wouldn't it be more newsworthy that someone like Bill Gates, a person heavily involved in several children's charities and vaccination programs, flew on Epstein's plane in 2013, years after Epstein was already convicted of sex crimes involving children? The Daily Beast decided to headline Michael Jackson in relation to Epstein, based on one single sentence in a book that Jackson had been enough of an Epstein acquaintance to visit Epstein in Palm Beach. Obviously, they were not acquainted enough for Epstein to have Jackson's phone number, since the phone number listed under the name Michael Jackson in Epstein's phone book was that of Jackson's former lawyer, one he had fired back in 2003. While it is common sense that the media would address a sitting president's link to a sexual predator like Epstein, it is rather odd that President Trump's single flight on Epstein's jet in 1997 to Newark, a year before Epstein even purchased his island, would be of more interest than 26 trips, 20 of which include visits to the island by former president whose wife is still hoping to become president herself. What is also rather strange is the media ignoring the fact that Donald Trump was the first of Epstein's connections to answer a subpoena in the case against the sex trafficker. Bradley Edwards, the lawyer who represented Epstein's accusers, says in his book Relentless Pursuit that Trump called him up in 2009 and that no deposition was necessary. Trump told Edwards that Epstein was a business acquaintance and that they had attended the same society events, and the last time he saw Epstein, he had visited Epstein's home in Palm Beach and noticed young women outside. Epstein then claimed that the women were part of a mentoring type program that he was involved in, which Trump thought was a bit odd. Trump calls Epstein strange, and he claims he never really liked him, before sharing a list of people who would have known Epstein's propensities better.
This is Derek, and we're here at the Palm Beach County Courthouse. Just wrapped up the civil trial dealing with Mr. Bradley Edwards, attorney who's represented many of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. First off, thank you so much for your work and for everything you've done.
Absolutely, you're welcome.
Now, just one more question on that document, and this goes to the more salacious rumors, but I would like you to just, whatever you can say on it. Obviously, our current president has had relationships with Epstein in the past, and there are those Katie Johnson and maybe other victims who have accused Trump of being involved in things like this. In my experience, Trump supporters will not listen to anything along those lines. Obviously, we're not a court of law here right now, but are those claims of that case was dropped? It was dropped before it went to court. In your opinion, as a lawyer and your experience, is there anything you can say as to the validity of those claims, or whether or not there will be any more about that?
Nothing at all. The only thing that I can say about President Trump is that he is the only person who, in 2009, when I served a lot of subpoenas on a lot of people, or at least gave notice to some pretty connected people that I wanted to talk to them, he is the only person who picked up the phone and said, let's just talk. I'll give you as much time as you want. I'll tell you what you need to know, and was very helpful in the information that he gave, and gave no indication whatsoever that he was involved in anything untoward whatsoever, but had good information that checked out and that helped us, and that we didn't have to take a deposition of him.
That was in 2009?
That was in 2009.
In 2015, Edwards took Trump's deposition for a different, unrelated case, and Trump is said to have shared even more information about Epstein. According to Edwards, Trump framed most of the information he had about potentially relevant leads as rumors he had heard over the years, but that these rumors were still helpful for their case. At another point in the book, Edwards writes that he never said or thought that Bill Clinton did anything wrong in connection with Epstein or their plane trips, but by all appearances, Clinton must have had some helpful information, and that he couldn't help but wonder why Clinton never picked up the phone to tell them what he knew. And this is a good point. Why didn't Clinton pick up the phone when the first allegations against Epstein came to light? He surely must have had some information that could be helpful after having travelled with Epstein on so many occasions. When the Harvey Weinstein allegations hit, Hillary Clinton attempted to shift the attention from Weinstein to Donald Trump, telling the BBC with a straight face that we have someone admitting to being a sexual assaulter in the Oval Office. When asked about the accusations against her own husband by multiple women, Clinton replied, "That has all been litigated." That was the subject of a huge investigation, as you might recall, in the late 90s, and there were conclusions drawn. That was clearly in the past.
Now, the other big story of this week, as you know, is your friend Harvey Weinstein, who has had a huge slew of really serious allegations made against him. What was your reaction when you first read those allegations?
I was shocked and appalled, because I've known him through politics, as many Democrats have. He's been a supporter.
Funder, yeah.
He's been a funder, and for all of us, for Obama, for me, for people who have run for office in the United States. So it was just disgusting, and the stories that have come out are heartbreaking. And I really commend the women who have been willing to step forward now and tell their stories. But I think it's important that we not just focus on him and whatever consequences flow from these stories about his behavior, but that we recognize this kind of behavior cannot be tolerated anywhere, whether it's in entertainment, politics. After all, we have someone admitting to being a sexual assaulter in the Oval Office. There has to be a recognition that we must stand against this kind of action that is so sexist and misogynistic.
And this depends upon women coming forward and having the courage to come forward.
Right.
And yet in your book, the 3 women brought onto stage by Trump attacking your husband, and you kind of dismissed them. Was that the right thing to do? Are you sure about that?
Well, yes, because that had all been litigated. I mean, that was the subject of a huge, investigation, as you might recall, in the late 90s, and there were conclusions drawn, and that was clearly in the past.
While we are aware that any mention of Donald Trump in a somewhat positive light these days will be met with hateful comments by few, it does not change the fact that Donald Trump and Michael Jackson chose to be acquainted, and the two had known each other for the last 21 years in a friendly manner. To this day, Donald Trump and his family support Michael Jackson, play his music, and will tell anyone that Michael Jackson was not a paedophile. In addition, there are mention-worthy similarities between the two men and connections they share. For this reason, regardless of what you may think of Trump politically or personally, he cannot be ignored in this series.
Michael did a lot for charity, and if I ever needed him for something, if he had to come like tonight to Police Athletic League, not that he was thrilled about it because the last 10 years were tough for him, but he'd always be there. Michael was very loyal to his friends. The thing people don't really know, we all know he was an unbelievable entertainer. You know, you had Elvis Presley, you have Michael, you have very, very few like it. But Michael was a very, very smart guy. A lot of people don't realize that he was really smart.
What do you make of this whole story that's out there? Can you believe it? You know him.
I don't believe it personally.
Michael's been a long-time resident of Trump Tower, and last night the Donald strongly reiterated his defense of Jackson with Larry King by going after the accuser's mother.
She's had plenty of experience at going after people, and she goes after them viciously and violently, and I saw a story and I read another story about some of the things she's done, and I don't believe it.
But you know what it's like when an indictment comes down.
It's tough.
It's presumption.
It's tough. It's tough to win, but I have a feeling he's going to win, Larry.
I had no idea he'd be that strong defensive of him. And good for Donald, you know. You know, we do believe in innocence in this country, hopefully.
He lives in the building, and he's been a total gentleman, and we've never seen anything like what we're reading about.
Donald Trump, the king of New York real estate, is actually a landlord to the king of pop. Billy Bush spoke to the Donald in the very tower where Jackson owns a residence.
What do you make of this whole story that's out there? Can you believe it? You know him.
I don't believe it personally. There are many people that feel that Michael is being used in a way to make money. I just know that Michael Jackson's been with me for a long time, and we've never had a problem.
Here's what we're trying to get you to consider. If you are 100% honest with yourself, does it make any sense for the majority of Hollywood and mainstream media to focus their efforts on solely vilifying the likes of Michael Jackson and Donald Trump based on empty accusations, yet allow others a free pass? Not only give a free pass, but actively promote them as exemplary representatives of moral character. Does it make any logical sense that during the 2016 election, one candidate was accused of heinous things with no evidence, while the other was paraded around as a savior and champion of women, who stood by a husband who was accused of sexual assault and rape on more than one occasion? A husband who also enjoyed a close friendship with a known sex offender. A sex offender whose nefarious crimes we are still uncovering. Hillary Clinton turned her back on a woman working within her campaign when she stepped forward to report one of Hillary's advisors for sexual harassment. The advisor was kept on. The accuser was reassigned, shunned for daring to make an allegation. Does this behavior sound like that of a champion of women?
On Tuesday, November 8th, this country will make one of the most important decisions in its history. And the only way we can prove that to you is by having lots of famous people.
Lots of famous people.
Lots and lots of famous people.
Just a ton of famous people.
Repeating how important.
How important it is. Register.
Vote.
There's so many famous people.
But you only get this many famous people together if the issue's
one that truly matters to all of us.
A disease or
ecological crisis or
a racist, abusive coward who could permanently damage the fabric of our society.
Oprah Winfrey is shoved down the throats of the population as a loving figure who is wise and fair, fighting for equality and standing up for survivors by giving platforms to fraudsters like Wade Robson and James Safechuck. Yet, her father was accused of sexual harassment and Winfrey did not stand by the victim and turn away from her father. Instead, she settled with the woman outside of court. When Michael Jackson settled out of court, the mob was determined to lynch him, implying guilt. Let's remember too that Winfrey, Clinton and many Hollywood pillars of morality enjoyed beneficial friendships with the now notorious rapist and abuser Harvey Weinstein. Whispers were circulating of Weinstein's nefarious behaviour for years before the first accusation even hit headlines. Did these elite A-listers who jumped at the chance to hang, draw and quarter Michael Jackson, Donald Trump, Johnny Depp and others turn their back on the known predator? Nope. Not even slightly. They crawled up his backside, called him God in acceptance speeches, grinned widely with their arms around him at parties, and were even photographed sucking on his ear.
Harvey Weinstein, Bob Weinstein, God bless him.
Harvey Weinstein, who believed in us and made this movie.
Harvey and Bob Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein. Thank you, Harvey Weinstein. Especially Harvey.
I want to thank Harvey and Bob Weinstein.
Thank Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey, who first took me on 20 years ago.
I would like to thank Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein, who had the guts, the courage, the commitment.
Especially Harvey Weinstein, a man of dedication and vision.
Harvey Weinstein. Well, listen, so...
Harvey and Bob Weinstein. You also break my heart with your uncensored passion.
Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey and Bob. And Harvey and Bob Weinstein.
To you, Harvey.
Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein.
The Harvey Weinstein Company, okay?
Thank you, Harvey Weinstein, for putting your heart behind this film and shining the light on this. We really like to share this with you.
I want to thank the Mishpucha Weinstein.
I want to start by thanking Harvey Weinstein for organizing this amazing day. Harvey. This is possible because of Harvey. He is a wonderful human being, a good friend, and just a powerhouse. And the fact that he and his team took the time to make this happen for all of you should say something not about me or about this place, but about you. All right, everybody, we are here because of you.
At what point do we put our political alliances aside to at least acknowledge the hypocrisy that these elite live by? At what point do we realise we can both dislike a person in the public eye, yet demand they be treated fairly? Presidential candidate for 2020, Joe Biden, was accused by Tara Reid of sexually assaulting her in 1993. So what has been the reaction from the elite? Horror? Fury? Cancelling Joe Biden and demanding he step out of the race? Nope. No such thing. Hillary Clinton once tweeted that every survivor of sexual assault deserves to be heard, believed and supported. A statement made by many of the hashtag #MeToo advocates and blue ticks on Twitter when allegations against Michael Jackson, Donald Trump, or any other person on the Hollywood shit list are brought up.
Alyssa, the other night, I logged on to Twitter, and typically my Twitter experience these days is I go on and I look at what's trending just to see, okay, it's basically a way of telling me what people are talking about. And you were trending.
Right. That's how I do it too.
Yeah. What did you do that you were trending?
So it's actually quite a serious reason, I think. So I endorsed Joe Biden.
Okay, good.
And there have been accusations against Joe about a sexual assault.
Right, and people were saying, "How can you do that?" Because you're.
I have not publicly said anything about this. If you remember, it kind of took me a long time to publicly say anything about Harvey as well, because I believe that even though we should believe women, and that is an important thing, and what that statement really means is, like, for so long, the go-to has been not to believe them. So really we have to sort of societally change that mindset to believing women, but that does not mean at the expense of not, giving men their due process and investigating situations.
I like that.
And giving, it's got to be fair in both directions.
But it appears that depends on who the accused is, because many Hollywood stars, as well as Miss Clinton herself, have endorsed Joe Biden for president and have decided that his accuser, Tara Reade, should not be heard or believed.
Really thrilled to have my friend, the former senator and former Secretary of State, and the woman who should be President of the United States right now, Hillary Clinton. Welcome, Hillary. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's a real pleasure to be here with you and to be part of this very important discussion. And I am thrilled to be part of your campaign to not only endorse you, but to help highlight a lot of the issues that are at stake in this presidential election.
Whether the accusations made by Miss Reade against Biden are true or not are irrelevant at this point. We are not claiming to know whether Joe Biden is guilty or innocent. What we are trying to get you to consider is that the political elite and Hollywood seem incredibly selective when it comes to who should be accused and who should be completely protected. Unless, of course, there comes a point where even Hollywood can't keep up their hypocrisy anymore, like in the case of Weinstein and Epstein. Why were the elite so quick to jump on the Leaving Neverland train based on a 4-hour movie that was filled with proven lies, but is radio silent when it comes to powerful people like Bill Clinton, James Franco, George Bush Sr., Ben Affleck, Bob Filner, and Nick Carter? Do you see where we're going with this yet? Why are the elite so incredibly selective and hypocritical when it comes to allegations of sexual misconduct? Why does Hollywood endorse and even campaign for certain political candidates with such a passion that one might think the world will cease to rotate if their candidate loses the election? What suddenly has made Hollywood so incredibly political that even other Hollywood stars ask them to F off?
This show should just be me coming out going, well done Netflix, you win everything, good night. But no, we got to drag it out for 3 hours. You could binge watch the entire first season of Afterlife instead of watching this show. That's a show about a man who wants to kill himself because his wife dies of cancer, and it's still more fun than this, okay? Spoiler alert, season 2 is on the way, so in the end he obviously didn't kill himself, just like Jeffrey Epstein. Shut up. I know he's your friend, but I don't care. You had to make your own way here in your own plane, didn't you? Right. Apple roared into the TV game with a morning show. A superb drama, yeah. A superb drama about the importance of dignity and doing the right thing, made by a company that runs sweatshops in China. So, well, you say you're woke, but the companies you work for, I mean, unbelievable. Apple, Amazon, Disney. If ISIS started a streaming service, you'd call your agent, wouldn't you? So, if you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. So, if you win, right, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God, and fuck off, okay?
Why is Michael Jackson, a decade after his passing, headlining in relation to Jeffrey Epstein, whilst big-time A-listers like Oprah Winfrey, Lady Gaga, Madonna, Beyonce, Jay-Z, Katy Perry, Naomi Campbell, Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep, John Legend, Chrissy Teigen, and many, many other Hollywood elites who have been documented on Epstein's flight logs are being celebrated and their connection to Epstein ignored? Why is Roman Polanski still being backed by some of the Hollywood royalty despite admitting to raping a 13-year-old girl?
Starting in 1900, we entered a previously unimaginable time of modern technology. Advances that allowed the rulers of this world to construct and direct our stories in ways we previously never imagined. As a result, new techniques to control the population were realized. These are the people from the companies that we have trusted to deliver us our news and tell our stories. This has always been about controlling what we as the population think and hear. They help create our culture and influence our society. We as citizens only trust them because as a society, we think that the gatekeepers have our best interest in mind.
The dangerous, edges here are that he's trying to undermine the media, trying to make up his own facts, and it could be that while unemployment and the economy worsens, he could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think, and that is our job. That is our job. That is our job. Our job.
As I was researching, I found that most of the early communication companies were developed for shipping or aviation. And a lot of the men that started these companies were commissioned by the military during World War I and World War II. Many of these men worked for the Army and Navy intelligence services along with the OSS, which we know became the CIA. There were many examples of these men becoming the heads or founders of some of the biggest motion picture and media companies before and after their government or military service. I wanted to know how many of the media companies in today's world connected back to Washington. So I started looking. It was like a family tree. The connections between our government personnel and the media corporations was unbelievable. Google, Amazon, Netflix, Twitter, CNN, ABC. So what would happen if all these companies had the same political ideology or agenda? We as this population like to hear people confirm our confirmation biases. We like to hear people tell us that we're right. We don't like to be wrong. And we believe that the people on the media and the people that we're listening to have our best interests in mind. The problem is what if they don't? So if you stop and think about it, they can place any agenda on the population that they choose.
Leaving Neverland may have never even been a thing at all if it wasn't for the promotion for the film by Oprah Winfrey and Gayle King. Winfrey and King, together with Winfrey's close friend David Geffen, were able to view the film just days after it released at Sundance while vacationing on Geffen's yacht. One might wonder why Oprah thought watching a paedophile propaganda movie was an appropriate way to celebrate her birthday. But even more suspicious was the fact that they actually had the film right after the premiere at Sundance, months before the public or even the Jackson family and estate were able to watch it. It does make you wonder how deep their involvement in this hit piece was, doesn't it? Tuning into Winfrey's After Neverland show, you would think you were watching an ad for Nambla.
I think so many parents don't understand that it doesn't feel like hurt. No. And once you have committed, once you have, in your case, actually said vows and you have rings to prove that, as you say, that you all are together, right. You're all in.
Yeah, I mean, even before that, I was all in. I mean, the intensity of the love that you have for him. He also wedges, space between you and your parents, you and the rest of the world. He works very hard at that. So it's you and him against the world. And that intense love combined with the world's intense love for him is overwhelming. I mean, for a kid, it's just...
So this is what so many people don't understand. A big part of the confusion and shame for child victims is that the attention and the seduction from the predator, who is probably going to be somebody you know. Right. In order for it to work, it has to be somebody you know, somebody you admire, somebody you respect, or maybe even love. And it feels good. I mean, if you're 7 years old and somebody, which I was trying to say this to my friends who had children, you're 7 years old and someone is stroking your penis, it feels good.
Right.
Even though you don't have a name for what that is, it feels good.
Why would Oprah, who claims to have been a victim of child sexual abuse herself, say that sexual abuse feels good to a child if the abuser is any good? Any good at what? Molesting a child? There is no way these comments could ever be acceptable. But it does make you wonder about her motives. Winfrey has been close friends with Harvey Weinstein for decades. In fact, Weinstein and Winfrey were so close, victims claimed that Weinstein used the relationship with Winfrey to seduce young actresses to dupe them into thinking he would help them with their careers, only to use them for sex. In March of 2018, Winfrey claimed she had no knowledge of Weinstein's sexual misconduct. Weinstein had been accused of previous sexual harassment or assaults by dozens of women by then. She had previously worked with Weinstein on the 2013 movie The Butler, and described her association with the convicted Hollywood producer as friendly. And yes, that she was in association with Weinstein for the movie, but of course didn't know any of what was going on. Given the fact that Weinstein's sexual misconduct was a well-known open secret in Hollywood, the statement seems incredibly unrealistic. Singer Seal accused Winfrey of ignoring Weinstein's sex assault rumors for years and called Hollywood sanctimonious after being called a hypocrite himself in the comments by people reminding him that he was once married to Heidi Klum and thus had to have known himself whilst looking away as well. On December 11, 2018, Brazilian faith healer known as John of God was accused of being a serial sex abuser. Several women came forward with testimonies of him committing unwanted sexual advances during his healing sessions. The medium had gained international recognition after Oprah Winfrey profiled him in 2010 and then interviewed him back at his centre in 2012. Though the video of her 2010 profile has been taken down from YouTube, Winfrey said, "People around the world credit John of God and the spirits that work through him for many miraculous healings. He has also been misunderstood by some, persecuted by others, and even accused of impropriety." Upon hearing about the allegations, which include rape, Winfrey issued a statement in December of 2018 saying, "I empathise with the women now coming forward and I hope justice is served." But Winfrey was also caught in the middle of a sex scandal at her prized leadership academy, the girls-only school she funded in South Africa. Just 10 months after the first pupils were admitted, 15 girls claimed to be victims of sexual abuse at the hands of a matron employed by the establishment. Virginia Tiny Makopo faced 14 charges, including indecent assault, common assault, assaulting a minor to perform an indecent act, and verbal abuse of pupils. She denied the charges and was acquitted on October 11, 2010. Not long after, the school was hit by its second sex scandal, with 7 pupils suspended for displaying inappropriate behaviour towards other children. According to Afrikaans on Sunday newspaper, one 15-year-old preyed on a schoolmate and coerced others into lying to officials investigating the alleged incidents. 6 other pupils have been excluded from the girls-only boarding school after being alleged to have touched each other intimately, or intimidating others into partaking of inappropriate behaviour. Besides being caught up in sex scandals and keeping the company of sexual predators like Harvey Weinstein, Winfrey has quite the record of being a total hypocrite as well. Ahead of its premiere at the Sundance Festival, Winfrey dropped out as executive producer of the 2020 documentary On the Record, a documentary centered around Russell Simmons, who was accused of rape and sexual assault. In her statement, Winfrey stated, "In my opinion, there is more work to be done on the film to illuminate the full scope of what the victims endured, and it has become clear that the filmmakers and I are not aligned in that creative vision." Winfrey accused the on-the-record filmmakers of inconsistencies with their documentary story. It is interesting she didn't notice the dozens upon dozens of inconsistencies and blatant lies a year earlier when she decided to promote Leaving Neverland in such a way that one would almost think she had a financial interest in it. But then again, the documentary about her friend Harvey was coming out, and she was probably too busy trying to take the attention away from it to notice the blatant lies. On March 17, 2020, a fake news report went viral and Winfrey started trending on Twitter regarding allegations that she was arrested for her alleged involvement in a global sex trafficking ring after Weinstein was reported to have made a plea deal in order to lower his prison sentence. He claimed he could name celebrities who were supposedly all involved in sex trafficking club with the deceased Jeffrey Epstein. Weinstein allegedly gave up the names of Winfrey, Tom Hanks, Charlie Sheen, and more. Winfrey then had to set the record straight on her official Twitter account, tweeting, "Just got a phone call that my name is trending. I'm being trolled for some awful fake things. It's not true," tweeted Winfrey. "Haven't been raided or arrested, just sanitizing and self-distancing with the rest of the world. Stay safe, everybody." In her issue of O, the Oprah magazine, Winfrey went into more detail about how shocked she was by the claims. Imagine sitting cozily in bed when you get a call telling you you're trending on Twitter, and you discover it's a bogus and vile story that you were arrested and your home was raided for sex trafficking and child pornography, said Winfrey. "I can't and don't want to imagine an uglier accusation. At first, I was confused. Yes, that's my name, Oprah. But I'm in bed in my PJs and socks, and somehow #Oprah arrested is a thing. My worst fear realised. Being slandered, accused of a crime I didn't commit." If that isn't the epitome of hypocrisy, then what is? Oh, and of course Winfrey was also with her in 2016, even going as far as telling people to vote for Clinton even if they didn't like her.
I want to ask you about politics, if you want to talk about it. 8 years ago, more than 8 years ago, you threw your weight behind Barack Obama. In this election, will you get behind one of these candidates?
I'm with her. I have to say I'm with her. And I would also say that regardless of your politics, you cannot be a woman in the world and not see that this is a monumental time for women breaking the ceiling. Talk about breaking the ceiling. There's not a person in this room who hasn't been in the same conversation where people say, "I just don't know if I like her."
Yeah.
She not coming over your house. You don't have to like her.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to like her. Do you like democracy or do you want a demagogue?
It raises questions as to why Winfrey wouldn't be more bipartisan given the past friendly relationship with Donald Trump. One of Winfrey's friends, and another name found on Epstein's private jet log, is Geraldine Laybourne, co-founder of Nickelodeon, and with her husband Kit and Winfrey, the Oxygen Network. Laybourne left Nickelodeon in 1996 to become president of Disney ABC cable networks. On January 25, 2019, Leaving Neverland had its first screening at the Sundance Festival. Untouchable, the documentary about the sexual assault accusations against Winfrey's good friend Harvey Weinstein, was screening at Sundance as well. Strangely enough, a list of documentaries screening at Sundance in an online article from November 2018 makes no mention of any Michael Jackson documentary at all, as if the documentary was pulled from the shelves after the realization hit that the attention needed to be diverted from the Weinstein documentary. An article from December 2017 in the New York Times gives us an interesting story about Weinstein and Michael Jackson. After the news broke that a Canadian woman anonymously filed a lawsuit accusing Weinstein of assaulting her in 2000, AJ Benzer, A former New York Daily News gossip columnist received a text from Weinstein saying, "Help me." The article goes on saying that Weinstein and Benzer had discussed a plan over dinner in West Hollywood in late 2003 or early 2004 to help Weinstein avoid embarrassment. Benzer had discovered that Weinstein, while married to his first wife, had an affair. Benzer had a suggestion.
I could supply your PR girls with a lot of gossip, a lot of stories. And if people come at them with their Harvey's having an affair story, they can barter.
Benzer recalled telling Weinstein,
he, referring to Weinstein, said, "AJ, it's got to be good stories." And I said, "Don't you worry about it."
Benzer, who got paid by Weinstein, reported items on Michael Jackson and others and sent them to Weinstein's communications team, though he doesn't know whether they were used to trade stories about Weinstein. Now, this could be a coincidence, but around the same time Weinstein asked Benzer for help to distract people from his own scandals, Neverland was raided and Michael Jackson was arrested and charged for child molestation allegations. Surely this helped Weinstein a great deal, diverting the public's attention from his scandals. Also, it is important to mention that Weinstein teamed up with none other than Tommy Mottola to develop, produce, and back a Broadway musical based on the Pink Floyd opus in August of 2004. In 2017, Mottola and his wife Telia teamed up with HBO for a new documentary series. Harvey Weinstein co-founded Miramax, which was purchased for $18 million by the Walt Disney Company on June 30th, 1993. Weinstein and his brother Bob remained at the head of the film company after Disney took over ownership. Something that is surely nothing but a coincidental chain of events, but nevertheless worth mentioning, is that the last movie that was released by Miramax before Disney took over is the 1993 movie called House of Cards. The movie follows the struggling of a mother to reconnect with her daughter, who has been traumatized by the death of her father. It was released on June 25, 1993. On July 16, 1993, the next movie released, and was the first by Miramax after it was purchased by Disney, was called Benefit of Doubt, the same day that Geordie Chandler was drugged and coerced into saying that Michael Jackson had molested him. Weinstein left Disney's Miramax to start his Weinstein Company on September 30th, 2005, just 3 months after the Michael Jackson child molestation trial had ended and Michael Jackson was acquitted of all charges. Although there doesn't seem to be a direct link between Harvey Weinstein and Evan Chandler, what we do know is that Evan Chandler was trying to make it in Hollywood for years and was dubbed Dentist to the Stars by Carrie Fisher. In her book, Shockaholic, Fisher says,
I had this dentist at the time, a Dr. Evan Chandler, who was a very strange character. He was what would be referred to as the dentist to the stars. And as one of the people who would have a necessary dental work just for the morphine, this man was one of those people who could arrange such a welcome service. He referred his patients to a mobile anaesthetologist who would come into the office to put you out for the dental work. And as if that wasn't glorious enough, this anaesthetologist could also be easily and financially persuaded to come to your house to administer the morphine for your subsequent luxury pain relief. And I would extend my arms, veins akimbo, and say to this man, send me away, but don't send me all the way. A little further on, Fisher says that the most disturbing things she remembered him saying was, you know, my son is very good looking. She goes on, now I ask you, what father talks about his child that way? Well, maybe some do, but A, I don't know them, and B, they probably aren't raising an eyebrow and looking suggestive when they say it. Over the years I've heard many proud fathers tell me, my son is great, or my kid is adorable, but this was the only time I'd ever heard this particular boast. It was grotesque. This man was letting me know that he had this valuable thing that he assumed Michael Jackson wanted, and it happened to be his son. But it wasn't who his son was. It was what he was. Good looking.
Besides his creepy comment about his own 13-year-old son and dubious dental work in Beverly Hills, Chandler also got in trouble with the California Board of Dental Examiners in December 1978. According to the book Untouchable: The Strange Life and Tragic Death of Michael Jackson by Randall Sullivan, Chandler performed restoration work on 16 of a single patient's teeth during one visit when he worked at the Crenshaw Family Dental Center, a clinic catering to low-income patients. After an investigation, the board ruled that Chandler was guilty of gross ignorance and/or inefficiency, and that his license be revoked. After an appeal, the revocation was reduced to a 90-day suspension plus 30 months of probation. Sullivan goes on saying,
Chandler dealt with his suspension by moving back to New York to write a screenplay, but was unable to sell it. By 1980, the year Geordie was born, the family had returned to Los Angeles, where Evan worked at a series of dentistry jobs and complained that each one made him more miserable than the last. By 1990, Evan had a successful dentistry practice in Beverly Hills by then, but in 1991 found himself once again in trouble due to claims of carelessness or incompetence. A model he was contracted to do restoration work for had suffered severe damage to her teeth and sued him for negligence. Chandler claimed the woman had signed a consent form accepting the risks involved in the procedures he'd undertaken, but he was unable to produce it when subpoenaed, telling the court that the document had been stolen from the trunk of his Jaguar. Eventually, the suit was settled out of court. In 1993, right around the time his son Geordie met Michael Jackson, Evan finally found some success in Hollywood when one of his scripts was rewritten by Mel Brooks and turned into the film Robin Hood Men in Tights. A lucrative career as a screenwriter did not result, however, and Evan soon fell behind on his child support payments. Eventually, his debt to June approached $70,000 with interest. June would claim that her ex-husband had been largely an absentee father to Geordie, rarely spending time with his son until Michael Jackson appeared.
Now, of course, it could all just be Chandler's luck that right around that time, Michael Jackson's car broke down and made his way to the business of June Chandler's new husband, David Schwartz. Schwartz has always seemed somewhat of an outsider in this story, and mainly mentioned in regard to his own financial troubles at the time and as the husband of. But Schwartz himself is more of an interesting character than might seem at face value, and has his own links with Hollywood. In an article from November 1986, the LA Times reported on Schwartz's business Rent-A-Wreck, which was in financial trouble after its shares were sold to the public a year earlier. According to the article, Schwartz was talking to potential buyers of his 20% stake he still held. Yet a month later, Schwartz was featured in a long article in the same LA Times promoting his company.
His car rental business prospered, largely by attracting a regular coterie of show business types, actors, producers, filmmakers, and network kingpins. His customers, to name a few, have included Richard Gere, Dan Aykroyd, and Ali McGraw. His fleet of 40-plus convertible Mustangs, said to be the largest collection anywhere, starred with Warren Beatty in the film Shampoo. Schwartz's skills at casting and matchmaking are legendary. He talked Henry Fonda, who occasionally rented a pickup from Rent-A-Wreck, into a rare appearance in a TV series. In another case, Schwartz got a film director to listen to several messages a customer had left on his answering machine. The director liked the voice. The actress, Brooke Adams, got the starring role opposite Sam Shepard in Days of Heaven. Actress Rachel Ward met actor and husband-to-be Brian Brown on The Lot.
But it was not just Schwartz himself who had a friendly relationship in Hollywood. Swartz's long-time business partner and former cable television executive, Jeffrey Nathanson, had a history with Hollywood of his own. In his blog, Nathanson writes,
"Back in Los Angeles, I took a shot at Disney and was referred to Buena Vista Films, Disney's distribution entity. I really needed some children's movies. Someone arranged for me to meet Buena Vista's president, a cantankerous guy named Irving Ludwig. I was ushered into his Burbank office, where Irving greeted me with, 'Make it quick, I'm very busy.' I noticed there was also a young fellow present who appeared to be Irving's assistant. Before I could begin my pitch, Irving said, 'You're the pay TV guy, right?' I nodded. 'Not interested. We're in the movie business.' 'Don't start,' Irving interrupted before I had a chance to go into my pitch. 'I'm a busy man.' 'But,' I interjected, 'no buts. Show the gentleman out, Semmel. Disney don't do pay TV.' With that, I left for my car accompanied by Irving's assistant, who introduced himself, saying, 'Irving's not the man to talk to. You have to see Card Walker, the president of the studio.' Ultimately, I was able to meet with Card Walker at lunch in the Disney commissary, and in time I got a couple of Disney pictures, not the animated classics, but good family fare. As an aside, the Ludwig assistant who gave me encouragement was Terry Semmel, later to become president of Warner Brothers Studios.
This means that a link between Harvey Weinstein and Swartz can absolutely be made through Disney and Nathanson. Whether there is a link between Chandler and Epstein is not known. What is known is that Epstein had ordered a professional dental chair for his island, and the same type of chair was found in his New York mansion. What triggered the Arvizo allegations was the Bashir documentary called Living with Michael Jackson. Although this might have been a British production, it was aired in the USA by ABC Network. ABC is owned by the Walt Disney Company. Not only did ABC air the documentary, they also hired Bashir for the show Nightline in 2005. It almost looks like a quid pro quo. At the time of the 2003 allegations, Harvey Weinstein had some issues with Disney and hired attorney Burt Fields to represent him. Burt Fields was Michael's lawyer in 1993. Fields also represented Jeffrey Katzenberg when Katzenberg was fired at the Walt Disney Company back in 1994. Before Katzenberg started DreamWorks with Steven Spielberg and David Geffen, a company with a logo that makes it painfully obvious as to whose idea it really was. You would think Katzenberg and Associates would have had a disturbed relationship with Disney, because after all, Disney lost hundreds of millions of dollars in the 90s because Katzenberg sued them. But Disney and DreamWorks had a 30-picture distribution deal between 2009 and 2016. When Bill Clinton was investigated for perjury in his impeachment case, Spielberg, Katzenberg, and Geffen were quick to come to the president's aid to fund his legal defense. They, as well as Harvey Weinstein, amongst the 62 donors, giving the maximum of $10,000, according to the 1998 article in the Washington Post. Wade Robson, when questioned by Tom Mesereau in court in 2005, claimed that he was directing films. When Mesereau asked if he could summarize what he was doing in that regard, he answered,
"The main focus right now, I did a short film that I wrote and produced and directed last year, and that's doing the whole film festival circuit right now. And I have a 3-picture deal with Disney as a film director, and we're developing an original musical."
No collaboration between Wade and Disney can be found after that time, which makes one wonder what that deal was about. Leaving Neverland was co-produced by HBO, which parent company is Warner Media Entertainment, which is owned by AT&T. Both HBO and Disney have streaming platforms online and are supposedly in competition with each other, but nothing can be further from the truth. According to a PDF that can be found on the website of AT&T, they have a magical collaboration.
Since 2013, when the company was named the official wireless sponsor of Walt Disney World Resort, the relationship with Disney has developed into one that is rich in collaboration and innovation.
Another interesting story is that of Michael's music catalogue. In addition to his shares of the Sony/ATV/Beatles catalogue, he also held his own publishing catalogue, the myJack Music Catalogue. Founded by Michael in 1980 as his personal publishing company, myJack Music also includes the classics Sly and the Family Stone catalogue, as well as songs by artists such as Ray Charles, Elvis Presley, and Aretha Franklin. While Michael's shares in the ATV music catalogue was sold to Sony for $750 million in 2016, the estate retained a 10% stake in the EMI Music Publishing and its ownership of the myJack catalogue, which holds the rights to Michael's songs and master recordings. Sony/ATV chairman and CEO Martin Bandier has said that the myJack catalogue is one of the most significant and valuable in music. In 2012, the administration of the myJack catalogue was moved from Warner Chappell, who had administrated the catalogue since it was founded in 1980, to Sony ATV. In an article of August of that year, Roger Freeman writes,
What's happened now is that Jackson's long contract with Warner Chappell, the publishing division of Warner Music Group, expired last December. Sony ATV, in which he has a 50% ownership interest, had the right to match or better any offer when myJack's deal with WMG was done. The deal was actually completed a couple of months ago, I'm told. Now all of Michael Jackson's music publishing will be in one place, Sony ATV. myJack holds all of his songs like Billie Jean and Beat It, plus hundreds of other publishing copyrights, including everything by Sly Stone. It's a plum win for Sony and a devastating loss for Warner Music. Warner Chappell was the only part of that company still doing well. To lose myJack, especially since Jackson's death and the renewed interest in his music, is a heavy setback.
Warner Music Group was sold by that time to a privately held company called Access Industries, owned by Leonard Blavatnik. But links with its former parent company, Warner Media Entertainment, were still strong, as became apparent in 2017 when Amedia, a large Russian film and TV studio Blavatnik owns a majority stake in, earned exclusive rights to premiere HBO content in Russia. A class action lawsuit filed against Warner Music Group's former CEO Edgar Bronfman Jr. in May of 2011 by one of its stockholders alleged that the WMG board of directors accepted the $3.3 billion bid from Access Industries rather than a higher offer from brothers Tom and Alec Gores. Blavatnik was a personal friend of Bronfman's and a former member of the WMG board, so claims the alleges that Blavatnik's friendship with Bronfman was a major factor in the board's decision to accept the offer. Blavatnik also worked his way into the movie business. Some of his closest associates have long had malodorous reputations and ultimately were accused of serious sexual misconduct.
His two best friends in Hollywood were Harvey Weinstein and Brett Ratner,
observes one executive who has done business with Blavatnik.
That's not a good look, is it?
While Weinstein was convicted, Ratner has been accused of misconduct by several women but not been charged with a crime. Not long after the myJack catalogue was moved away from Warner, Wade Robson and James Safechuck came out with their molestation accusations, which eventually resulted in the atrocity called Leaving Neverland in 2019. Co-produced by HBO. Leaving Neverland screened for the first time on what would have been Evan Chandler's 75th birthday. Warner Music Group's former CEO Edgar Bronfman Jr.'s father, Edgar Bronfman Sr., has a direct link to none other than Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein advised Bronfman in the late 70s on tax mitigation strategies when he worked as an options trader at Bear Stearns. Bronfman Jr.'s half-sister, Claire Bronfman, is notable for her involvement in NXIVM, a business involved with criminal activities that led to indictments on federal charges that include sex trafficking conspiracy, and conspiracy to commit forced labor. NXIVM's founder, Keith Raniere, was convicted in federal court of sex trafficking and racketeering on June 19, 2019. His associate, Smallville actress Allison Mack, pleaded guilty to racketeering charges in April of 2019 and is still awaiting sentencing. Bronfman pleaded guilty to conspiracy to conceal and harbour illegal aliens for financial gain and fraudulent use of identification. She faces several months in prison when sentenced. As for Disney, a company that keeps popping up in this story, their Disney Cruises has numerous trips to St. Thomas and St. John in the Virgin Islands. Travellers could also book an excursion off the cruise ship to a variety of adventurous destinations. One such destination includes several stops to Little St. James's Island, Jeffrey Epstein's now notorious paedophile island. Still today, this is what can be found on the magicalkingdoms.com website.
Be whisked away aboard the captain's RIB powerboat to a pair of sun-soaked snorkeling sites and prepare for an adventure like no other. Journey to picturesque Turtle Cove, Buck Island, and immerse yourself in an underwater wonderland where you're invited to swim and snorkel amidst a school of sea turtles for approximately 1 hour. Afterward, make your way to your second snorkel stop, Little St. James Island, where curious fish dart back and forth in the clear blue water, and colourful coral formations nestle next to amazing underwater formations. Afterward, enjoy a beverage and snack before making your way back to St. Thomas Harbour.
This gets even creepier when you know some ancient history. Tiberius, the second Roman emperor, was a notorious paedophile. On his island at Capri, from which he ruled Rome, he indulged in both sexual and violent practices with men, women, and children. He used to have underage children swimming with him while he was naked, and they would service him underwater. He called them his little fishes. Bob Iger, former CEO of the Walt Disney Company, which owns ABC, turned out to have played a major role in covering up the Epstein story for years. As became clear when an undercover video was released on the 10th anniversary of Evan Chandler's death on November 5th of 2019 by Project Veritas.
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will that also quashed the story. And then Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in it because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton. We had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on, to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now. Like, every day I get more and more pissed because I'm just like, oh my God, what we had was unreal. Other women backing it up. Hey, yep. Brad Edwards, the attorney, 3 years ago, saying there will come a day when we will realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile this country has ever known. And I had it all 3 years ago.
Would you raise your right hand, please?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton, we had everything. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air.
That's tape leaked to us by our latest network insider. This brave insider works at ABC News. ABC News anchorwoman Amy Robach is talking to her producer on a hot mic. She says she had the Jeffrey Epstein story 3 years ago, and her bosses at ABC News spiked it.
And then Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in it because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton, we had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on, to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now. Like, every day I get more and more pissed because I'm just like, oh my God, what we had was unreal.
Our insider told us this tape was recorded earlier this year in late August, a day or so after this NPR report came out sharply criticizing ABC News for not broadcasting the Robach-Giuffre interview years ago.
ABC has episodically covered the scandal, yet the interview was never broadcast, and Giuffre says she was never told why.
Other women backing it up. Hey, yep. Brad Edwards, the attorney, 3 years ago, saying, there will come a day when we will realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile this country has ever known. And I had it all 3 years ago.
But the creepy thing is that we would make access to all of these high-profile people.
Well, then I got a little concerned about why I couldn't get on.
On the leaked insider tape, Amy Robach says she had the Jeffrey Epstein story 3 years prior, but her exclusive interview was shelved. Robach says in the leaked tape there was a lot of pressure from Buckingham Palace. According to NPR, the famed lawyer Alan Dershowitz also pressured the network to kill the story.
Shortly before the interview was due to air, Harvard emeritus law professor Alan Dershowitz called the network. He was also one of Epstein's lead defense attorneys.
We wonder if the story was killed to protect the rich and powerful. It seems few were worried about protecting the women who may have been Jeffrey Epstein's victims. Remember, Epstein was still a free man 3 years ago. And just to be clear, the interview has still not aired. What is ABC News waiting for, or who are they still protecting?
She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton, we had everything.
Robach also has no doubt about what happened to Epstein when he finally was arrested and jailed.
So do I think he was killed? 100%. Yes, I do. Because he made his whole living blackmailing people. Yeah. There were a lot of men in those planes, a lot of men who visited that island, a lot of powerful men who came into that apartment.
I mean, when I heard he was found dead, was just someone was lucky.
I knew immediately. And they made it seem as though he made that suicide attempt 2 weeks earlier, but his lawyers claimed that he was roughed up by his cellmate around the neck. That was all like to plant the seed, and then that's why I really believe it, like really believe it.
The last of the leaked tape has Robach talking about alleged Epstein conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell and how she should be very careful.
He's got to have left evidence like in the unexplained.
Well, Ghislaine Maxwell, who I had all sorts of stuff on her too. I love it. I'm like, it's so funny to hear everyone say her name now because I'm like, oh my God, like I had all that, and everyone was like, who's that? Who cares? I kept getting that. Who cares? She knows everything. She should be careful. Well, she was his, like, she went out and recruited all of these girls.
Stand by.
She should watch her back. Because if she goes, I mean, I'd have like security guards all around me.
The brave insider who leaked this tape to us does not know who at ABC News spiked the story, but someone at ABC does. Our question: who killed the Epstein story at ABC News and why? Help us find out. James Goldston is the president of ABC News. What did he know, and when did he know it?
And as if the devil was shitting these coincidences out in layers, James Goldston was the other British journalist behind the documentary Living with Michael Jackson that, indirectly, led to the child molestation charges being brought up against Michael. Call us conspiracy theorists, but these coincidences stopped being mathematically possible a long time ago. Iger, along with Disney's former chairman Michael Eisner, was also named in a sexual assault suit by Paz de la Huerta against Harvey Weinstein in November of 2018. The complaint stated that Iger and Eisner made a series of decisions that allowed a range of actions by Harvey Weinstein that unacceptably harmed certain employees of Miramax. In September of last year, Bob Iger called Oprah Winfrey a dear old friend, and Winfrey said of Iger at a Save the Children's gala in Los Angeles a few days later that Iger's guidance and decency is what the country needs right now, and that she hoped to have been wearing an Iger 2020 t-shirt by then. Makes perfect sense that she would say that at a Save the Children's gala about a man that, as it turns out a month later, covered up for paedophile Jeffrey Epstein for years. A man in charge of the biggest children's entertainment company in the history of mankind. Let that sink in for a moment. Bob Iger, of course, was also with her in 2016. Iger not only backed Clinton with donations, he even hosted a Hollywood fundraising event for her. Iger stepped down as CEO of the Walt Disney Company in February 2020, claiming he wanted to focus more on the creative side of the company. This came rather unexpected because in April of 2019, Iger had announced that his definite retirement would not be until the end of 2021. He was supposed to have retired from Disney on June 30th, 2018, but was convinced to stay until July 2nd, 2019, and in December of 2018, the board extended Iger's contract until 2021.
I'm expecting my contract to expire at the end of 2021. I'd say, this time, I mean it. But I've said that before. I've been CEO since October 2005, and as I've said many times, there's a time for everything, and 2021 will be time for me to finally step down.
In 2005, a leaked voice message by Michael Jackson that he allegedly left for Dieter Wiesner caused outrage. The Anti-Defamation League demanded an apology from Michael Jackson after a US TV network aired what was said to have been a telephone answering machine message in which the pop star referred to Jews as leeches.
Michael Jackson has an anti-Semitic streak and hasn't learned from his past mistakes.
Anti-Defamation League director Abraham Foxman said in a statement,
"It seems every time he has a problem in his life, he blames it on Jews."
Michael was quoted as saying,
"They suck them like leeches. They start out the most popular person in the world, make a lot of money, big house, cars, and everything, and end up penniless. It's a conspiracy. The Jews do it on purpose."
The message was supposedly recorded 2 years earlier and had surfaced in connection with a lawsuit filed against Michael. The messages were among about a dozen released by lawyer Howard King, who represented Dieter Wiesner and Mark Schaeffel, who were locked in a business dispute with Michael and were suing him for millions. King said he released the messages to keep Jackson from appearing sympathetic in court. We're sure it's just another coincidence, but the US TV network that aired the voice message was ABC. Hillary Clinton's documentary, Hillary, was released at the 2020 Sundance Festival on January 25th. It can now be viewed on Hulu, a streaming service owned by Disney. Unlike Leaving Neverland, Hillary is not aimed to destroy its protagonist. It seems that this web of very powerful people had a vendetta against Michael Jackson. And truth be told, we haven't even scratched the surface. But we know for sure that it really is a small world after all. As we reach a sharp turn in the bend, we all ask, what on earth could Michael Jackson have known? We can speculate, but the subliminal messages in his work speaks volumes, and we'll leave that for another time.